ratios, specifically part-to-part and part-to-whole ratios. Being able to understand the difference between and how to make sense of these numbers. So first of all, a part-to-part ratio compares two different things. Like maybe we're talking about chocolate chip granola bars to peanut butter granola bars. Two different things. We often talk about these and explain like per or for every. These are the words we use in our meaningful sentences. Whereas in part to whole, we're comparing one thing to the total. So like chocolate chip granola bars to all granola bars. The key word here is going to be something like all. When we're talking about part to whole, we can talk percentages, and that's the big difference. So let's do some of these. The population of North Korea is estimated to be 26 million people, whereas the estimated population of South Korea is 51 million. Now, a couple of things to throw out here. If we would say the ratio of North Koreans to all Koreans, right, that would be 26 over 77, because 26 plus 51 is 77 total Koreans, right? If we say North and South, or, together. If we did this, we could change that to a decimal and write it as a percent, because this is part to whole. Whereas, if we would say North to South, now we are talking 26 to 51, and that is part to part. So we would have to use more of, for every 26 North Koreans, there are 51 South Koreans, that kind of thing. Okay? All right, so let's apply this a little bit. So we know, again, North Korea has 26 million, South Korea has 51. So first of all, using the data above, what is the ratio of North Koreans to South Koreans? Okay, now I highly recommend you write this stuff out. So North over South. I am a big fan of labeling my ratios when I'm thinking through this. So I have 26 million over 51 million. Part A, write this as a decimal. So we're going to take 26 divided by 51, and that gives me a kind of an ugly decimal. That's 509803, goes on and on and on. So rounding to the nearest thousands, that's in the third place. So I look at the 8. 8 tells me to round up. So I end up with 0.510. There's my decimal rounded to the nearest thousands. Now, can I write this as a percentage? No. Because, as we actually already talked about, North to South, this is part to part. And anytime we have a part-to-part ratio, okay, let me back up. When we're talking part to whole, if you think about percentages, 100% is the same as all. So we can do percentages when we have all, because all represents 100%. When we do not have all, we have no way to compare to 100%. So because it's part to part, the answer is no, we cannot write this as a percentage. So if we're going to interpret this ratio, I'm going to do this two different ways. So the first is using our decimal. Now this is the same as 0.510 over 1. And remember, this is North over South. So I would say there are 0.510 North Koreans for every 1 South Korean. And you might say right now, well, that makes no sense. You can't have half a person. Exactly. That's part of the issue with this. But if I take 0.510 over 1 and I multiply the top by 100 and the bottom by 100, that moves the decimal 2 places. I now have 51 over 100. It's an equivalent ratio. Talked about that before, hopefully. And now I can say there are 51 North Koreans for every 100 South Koreans. And that makes a whole lot more sense. All right, let's do one more. The population. We're going to use the same information. What is the ratio of South Koreans to all? So now we're doing South to all. So that's 51 over 77, because 26 plus 51 is 77 total. When you see the word all as part of your ratio, that should click something in your brain. So now let's write this as a decimal. So I would take 51 divided by 77. And again, ugly decimal ensues. But I can say to the nearest thousandth, I look at the 3. 3 tells me to round down. 0.662. Can I write this as a percentage? And hopefully you already know that the answer is yes, because this is part to whole. Whole means all. All means 100%. So now I can do that. So my meaningful sentence, well, let's change 0.662 to a percent, right? We multiply that by 100. So that gives me 66.2%. That means, right, I'm talking about South Koreans. So 66.2% of all Koreans are from South Korea. And that's the basic idea, right? So you have to recognize, is it part to part or part to whole? And then you can make your work from there.